I understand you'd like me to create the opening hook, Part 1, for the story about Ryo Nakamura, based on the detailed structure and analysis we've developed through the previous prompts. Here's the 150-word opening hook. Part 1. Opening hook. The applause following Ryo Nakamura's architectural presentation died quickly, replaced by excited murmurs when his younger brother Daichi took the stage. At 29, Ryo had grown accustomed to this pattern, his meticulous designs acknowledged with professional courtesy, while Daichi's flashier concepts received enthusiastic praise despite their structural flaws. "Brilliant as always, Daichi-kun," their father exclaimed during the family dinner that evening, raising his sake cup. Their mother beamed, refilling Daichi's plate first. Ryo's phone vibrated. A message from Emmy in France. "Did they finally recognize your genius today?" He smiled faintly, typing, "Same as always. But your opinion matters more." 3 years of this long-distance relationship had taught Ryo that validation could come from unexpected places. Still, a question lingered. Would his family ever truly see him? Chapter 1. Shadows and Light. Scene 1. Overlooked Excellence. "Nakamura-san, these modifications to the Takeda Tower design are quite impressive," Director Sato said, nodding at the architectural renderings Ryo had presented. "The reinforced support structure addresses the wind resistance concerns effectively." Ryo bowed slightly. "Thank you, sir. I've incorporated several innovations that should reduce construction costs by nearly 12% while improving structural integrity." At home that evening, Ryo arranged his chopsticks carefully beside his rice bowl as he described the project to his family. "Director Sato approved my redesign. The modifications will likely become standard for future high-rises in the company." His mother nodded absently while filling his father's cup. "That's nice, Ryo. More rice?" "Did you hear about Daichi's new client?" his father interrupted, eyes brightening. "Asahi Holdings, one of the most prestigious development firms in Tokyo." Ryo's mother clapped her hands. "Oh my, Asahi Holdings. Daichi, tell us everything." Daichi leaned back, grinning broadly. "It's just a preliminary meeting, but they were very impressed with my portfolio. They're looking for fresh designs for their luxury condominium development." "Of course they were impressed," their father beamed. "Our Daichi has always had the creative touch. Remember his award-winning school project when he was just 16? Ryo ate quietly, watching family photographs on the wall behind them. Daichi receiving awards. Daichi at graduation. Daichi's first professional project. His own accomplishments resided primarily in a small folder in his father's office drawer. "How is your project going, Ryo?" his mother asked, almost as an afterthought. "It's going well," he replied simply, no longer seeing any point in elaboration. Scene 2. Distant Connection. In his bedroom, Ryo adjusted his laptop screen as Emmy's face appeared, the afternoon sunlight of Paris creating a warm glow around her. "There you are," she said, her direct gaze immediately connecting despite the thousands of kilometers between them. "How did the presentation go? Did they recognize the brilliance of that cantilevered design?" Ryo felt the tension in his shoulders begin to ease. Director Sato approved it, said it would likely become standard for future projects. "As it should. That structural innovation alone would have taken my team months to develop." She leaned closer to the camera. "You don't seem as pleased as you should be." "It's nothing. Just the usual family dinner afterward." "Ah." Emmy nodded, understanding immediately. "Let me guess. 5 minutes on your achievement, 30 minutes celebrating whatever Daichi had for lunch? Ryo's mouth quirked up slightly. He has a meeting with Asahi Holdings. And you have Director Sato implementing your designs as company standard, she countered, which actually impacts real buildings and real lives. She shifted, revealing architectural plans spread across her desk. Speaking of real impact, look at what I'm working on for the Lyon Cultural Center. For the next 20 minutes, they exchanged professional insights, their conversation flowing seamlessly between structural theory and aesthetic considerations. With Emmy, Ryo felt his ideas expand rather than contract. "I miss you," he said suddenly, surprising himself with the admission. "I miss you too." Her smile softened. "Only 3 more months until my project wraps up here." The doorbell chimed downstairs. Ryo glanced at his watch. "That must be everyone arriving for dinner. I should go." "Go dazzle them with your genius," Emmy said. "Call me tomorrow?" "Of course." Ryo closed the laptop reluctantly, already feeling the warmth of their connection fading. Scene 3. The announcement. The extended family gathering filled the Nakamura dining room with cheerful conversation. Aunts, uncles, and cousins passed dishes across the large table, while Ryo's mother presided over the feast with practiced efficiency. "More sukiyaki, Aunt Midori?" Ryo offered, finding comfort in the routine of family obligation. His father clinked his glass. "Everyone, I'd like to make a toast to Daichi, who continues to make us proud with his achievements." Glasses raised around the table as Daichi accepted the tribute with a practiced smile. "Actually," Daichi said once the toast concluded, "I have an announcement to make." He paused dramatically, ensuring all attention was focused on him. "I wanted you all to know that Hana and I are officially together now." Ryo froze, chopsticks halfway to his mouth. "Hana?" "His colleague from the architectural firm." "Ryo's girlfriend?" Aunt Midori asked, looking confused. "Former girlfriend," Daichi corrected with a smile. "We've been spending time together on the Asahi Holdings project and, well, these things happen." A moment of awkward silence followed before Ryo's mother broke into a wide smile. "Oh, Daichi, Hana is such a lovely girl, so talented too." "Son, this is wonderful news," his father added, clapping Daichi on the shoulder. "I know it might be a bit uncomfortable," Daichi said, glancing at Ryo with what appeared to be genuine concern. "But Hana and I couldn't deny our connection." Ryo sat perfectly still as congratulations erupted around the table, his mind racing to process what was happening. Hana wasn't his girlfriend. They were merely colleagues who had collaborated on a project last year. He had never dated her, had barely thought of her outside work, yet here was his family celebrating Daichi for stealing someone who had never been Ryo's to begin with. The realization that no one had even bothered to confirm this basic fact before celebrating Daichi's supposed triumph struck Ryo with the force of a physical blow. He looked around the table at his beaming parents, at Daichi accepting congratulations, at relatives shooting him sympathetic glances, and for the first time he wondered if anything he said would even matter. Chapter 2. Misplaced Loyalty. Scene 1. Silenced Correction. "Actually," Ryo said, finding his voice as the congratulations began to quiet, "Hana and I were never—" "Daichi, have you met her parents yet?" Aunt Midori interrupted, leaning forward eagerly. "Not formally," Daichi replied, "but we're planning a dinner next week." Ryo tried again. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Hana and I were just—" "Will she be joining us for the New Year celebration?" his mother asked, already mentally rearranging seating plans. "We should prepare the guest room." "Mother, Rio said, his voice firmer now. Hana was never my girlfriend. We were colleagues who worked together on the Miyazaki project last year. His words seemed to evaporate into the air, unheard or unregistered. Daichi, tell us how you two connected, his father urged, refilling Daichi's sake cup. Was it at the company gala? Rio watched as his brother launched into the story of how he and Hana had met during initial consultations for the Asahi Holdings project. Not once did anyone acknowledge Rio's attempt to clarify the situation. I hope there are no hard feelings, brother, Daichi said suddenly, turning to Rio with what appeared to be genuine concern. These things happen, and I'm sure you'll find someone else soon. Rio met his brother's gaze, recognizing the familiar pattern. Daichi wasn't being deliberately cruel. He simply existed in a reality constructed by their parents, where Ryo's experiences were secondary, malleable, even erasable. No hard feelings, Rio replied quietly, the words hollow in his mouth. Excuse me, I need some air. He rose from the table, his departure barely noticed as his mother began discussing potential wedding venues. Scene 2. Celebration of Betrayal. The following weekend, Rio arrived at his parents' home to find it transformed. Streamers hung from the ceiling, a congratulatory banner stretched across the living room wall, and the dining table was laden with elaborate dishes. "What's all this?" he asked, though he already knew. "A small celebration for Daichi and Hana," his mother replied, arranging flowers. "Just family, and a few close friends. Could you help your father with the sake?" Throughout the afternoon, relatives and family friends arrived bearing gifts and well wishes. Rio stationed himself near the drinks table, performing the dutiful role of serving others while maintaining a polite smile. "Such a lovely couple," Rio's grandmother commented, accepting a cup of tea from him. "And after your heartbreak too, you're handling it very well." "There was no heartbreak, grandmother," Rio said gently. "Hana and I were never dating." The elderly woman patted his hand. "No need to put on a brave face, dear. Time heals all wounds." When Daichi and Hana arrived, the crowd erupted in cheers. Hana, poised and fashionably dressed, accepted the attention with practiced grace, while Daichi beamed beside her. Watching them, Rio realized they did make a visually striking couple, both possessing the kind of confident charisma he had never mastered. "A toast," his father announced, raising his glass. "To Daichi and Hana, may your personal happiness lead to professional success." Gifts were presented, an expensive watch from his parents, a weekend getaway from an uncle, a set of traditional ceramics from his grandmother, all far more elaborate than anything Rio had received for his recent promotion. "And this is from Rio," his mother said, presenting a gift Rio had never seen before. Daichi unwrapped it to reveal an elegant fountain pen. "Thank you, brother," he said with genuine warmth. "I'll use this to sign all my important contracts." Rio nodded, not bothering to point out that he hadn't purchased the gift. What would be the point? In his family's version of reality, he had already been assigned his role in this narrative, the supportive brother graciously accepting defeat. As conversation flowed around him, a question formed in Ryo's mind. How long had he been complicit in his own erasure? Scene 3. Professional Implications. Monday morning at the office brought blessed normalcy. Rio immersed himself in structural calculations for the Takeda Tower project, finding comfort in the mathematical certainty that stress loads didn't change based on who was calculating them. "Did you hear about the Asahi Holdings luxury condo project?" Tanaka, a fellow engineer, asked during their coffee break. "Apparently, they're fast-tracking it with some bold design concepts," Ryo's attention sharpened. "Oh, what have you heard? My cousin works in their permitting department, says the lead designer is pushing for cantilevered balconies extending nearly 6 meters, unprecedented for residential construction in that earthquake zone." A flicker of professional concern sparked in Ryo's mind. That would require exceptional reinforcement. Who's the lead designer? Some up-and-coming architect named Hana Yoshida, working with a junior project manager from Matsumoto Design. Ryo kept his expression neutral despite the surge of recognition. Daichi Nakamura? That's the one, Tanaka confirmed. Know him? He's my brother. Tanaka's eyebrows rose. Small world. Well, they're making waves with their proposal. Very aesthetic, very ambitious. The conversation was interrupted by Daichi himself, striding confidently through the office toward Ryo's desk. "Big brother, thought I'd surprise you for lunch," he announced. "I want to show you the preliminary renderings for the Asahi project. Hana's concepts are revolutionary. Suspended gardens, glass floors. It'll redefine luxury living in Tokyo." As Daichi spread glossy concept drawings across Ryo's desk, covering his careful structural calculations, Ryo studied the designs with growing professional concern. The elegant lines and dramatic cantilevers were visually stunning, but structurally problematic. "These extensions," Ryo said carefully, "have you calculated the load-bearing requirements?" "Hana says traditional load calculations are too conservative," Daichi replied dismissively. "She's using new composite materials that allow for greater flexibility." Ryo recognized the dangerous combination of overconfidence and inadequate technical knowledge. This wasn't just about family dynamics anymore. People would live in these buildings. "The Asahi Holdings reputation rides on this project," Daichi continued proudly. "And when it succeeds, Hana and I will be the most sought-after team in the industry." Watching his brother's animated excitement, Ryo made a mental note to research the project specifications more thoroughly. What had begun as a personal misunderstanding was evolving into something with potentially serious professional consequences. Chapter 3. Professional Crossroads. Scene 1. Refuge in Excellence. For the next several days, Ryo arrived at the office before dawn and left well after sunset. His desk became an island of order and precision in a sea of personal chaos. While he couldn't control his family's distorted perceptions, he could control the elegant mathematics of structural engineering. "Nakamura-san, you've been here since 5 a.m., Tanaka observed, placing a cup of green tea beside Ryo's keyboard. "The Takeda Tower revisions aren't due for another 2 weeks. Ryo looked up from his monitor, blinking away the digital haze. 3-dimensional models of steel frameworks rotated on his screen, each stress point carefully calculated to withstand typhoon-force winds. "I've developed an alternative support system that reduces materials by 8% while increasing stability," Ryo explained, gesturing to the screen. "See how the cross-bracing distributes lateral force more efficiently?" Tanaka leaned closer, his expression shifting from concern to professional interest. "That's remarkable. You've essentially redesigned the standard approach to skyscraper reinforcement." Ryo nodded, feeling the quiet satisfaction that came only from solving complex problems. Here, his solutions weren't ignored or dismissed. They were evaluated on merit alone. Director Sato paused at Ryo's desk later that afternoon, studying the printouts spread across the surface. "This reinforcement design is unconventional," he noted, tracing a finger along the structural diagram. Ryo tensed slightly, prepared for criticism. "It's brilliant," Sato continued. "Submit a formal proposal. If it tests well, we'll implement it company-wide. As colleagues filed out at day's end, Rio remained, refining calculations under the soft glow of his desk lamp. The ordered world of engineering provided a sanctuary where facts were facts, regardless of who presented them. In this domain, at least, excellence spoke for itself. His phone vibrated with a message from Emmy, momentarily pulling him from his mathematical refuge. Scene 2. Distant perspective. Rio's apartment was minimalist and orderly, much like his workspace. At 11 p.m., he settled on his sofa with his laptop, the blue light illuminating his tired features as Emmy's image appeared on screen. "You look exhausted," she said immediately, the afternoon sunlight of Paris creating a warm backdrop behind her. "Are you sleeping at all?" "I'm fine," Rio replied automatically, "which means you're not fine at all. Talk to me." He hesitated, then recounted the celebration for Daichi and Hana, including the gift he hadn't purchased. "They gave a gift in your name?" Emmy's indignation was visible even through the pixelated connection. "That's crossing a line. It's not worth confronting them about." "Maybe not, but it's worth acknowledging how manipulative it is." She leaned closer to the camera. "What's really bothering you, Rio?" This goes beyond the usual Daichi favoritism. The directness of her question broke through his careful composure. "They've created this entire narrative where I'm the heartbroken ex-boyfriend graciously accepting defeat. No one even heard me when I explained Hana and I were never together." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm not sure they've ever really heard me." "And that hurts," Emmy said softly, not as a question. "Yes." The admission felt both painful and liberating. "But what concerns me more is this Asahi project. From what I've seen of Hana's designs, they're prioritizing aesthetics over structural integrity." "Dangerous territory," Emmy agreed, "especially with residential construction." "Exactly, and with Daichi managing the project," Rio trailed off. "This isn't just about family dynamics anymore, is it?" Emmy observed. "It's becoming an ethical issue." Rio nodded, feeling the weight of the situation. "People will live in those buildings." "Then perhaps it's time to stop being the quiet, accommodating son and brother," Emmy suggested gently. "Your expertise matters. Your voice matters." Something shifted in Rio's perspective. A subtle but significant realignment, like a load-bearing beam finding its proper position. "I've been working on something," Emmy said, changing the subject. "A collaborative design project that I think would interest you. The Lyon Cultural Center has some challenging spatial requirements." As they discussed the technical aspects of her project, Rio felt his professional confidence returning. With Emmy, he was valued for exactly who he was: his precision, his technical skill, his measured approach to problems. "I should let you get some sleep," she said eventually. "But think about what I said. Your voice deserves to be heard." After disconnecting, Rio stood at his window, looking out at Tokyo's glittering skyline, each building a testament to the marriage of artistry and engineering. The conversation with Emmy had illuminated something he'd long suspected. Silence wasn't always a virtue. Scene 3. Fault Lines. The Tokyo Architectural Society's quarterly symposium provided a neutral ground for professionals across competing firms to exchange ideas. Rio attended primarily to hear a presentation on earthquake-resistant foundations, but found himself drawn into conversation at the networking reception afterward. "Nakamura-san, good to see you." Watanabe, a respected structural engineer from a rival firm, greeted him. "Have you been following the Asahi Holdings luxury condo project?" "Somewhat." Rio replied carefully. I understand my brother is involved in project management. Watanabe lowered his voice. There's concern in regulatory circles. The design team is pushing for variances on several building codes, particularly regarding the cantilevered balconies and the glass-bottomed pool spanning the 23rd floor. Rio maintained a neutral expression despite his internal alarm. Those elements would require exceptional reinforcement. Precisely. Yet the lead designer is resisting the standard safety coefficient multiplicators, claims they're outdated and stifling innovation. Watanabe shook his head. I've reviewed the preliminary plans as a regulatory consultant. The aesthetic concept is striking, but... Their conversation paused as Hana Yoshida herself approached, elegant in a designer suit, several senior architects in her wake. Discussing my design, gentlemen? Her confident smile didn't quite reach her eyes. The Asahi Towers will revolutionize residential architecture in Tokyo. Sometimes innovation requires challenging outdated conventions. Innovation should never compromise safety, Rio replied evenly. Hana's smile tightened. Ah, Rio, always the conservative engineer. This is why Daichi and I work so well together. He appreciates vision while I respect execution. She turned to Watanabe. The regulatory variances will be approved. We've already secured preliminary support from the Urban Development Committee. After she departed, Watanabe looked troubled. Political connections shouldn't override engineering principles. Those designs, as currently specified, he hesitated. The stress modeling shows potential catastrophic failure points during a significant seismic event. Rio felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. How significant? A 7.0 or above could trigger progressive collapse, especially with those extended cantilevers and the reduced core support structure. The implications were staggering. Tokyo's earthquake risk was not theoretical. It was a matter of when, not if, and the proposed luxury condominiums would house hundreds of people. The plans I've seen must be preliminary, Rio said, trying to reassure himself as much as Watanabe. Surely the final engineering review will require proper reinforcement. That's just it, Watanabe replied grimly. I've heard Asahi Holdings is fast-tracking the project, minimizing the review process. Apparently, they've already pre-sold 60% of the units based on Yoshida's design concepts. As Rio drove home that evening, the ethical dimensions of the situation crystallized with painful clarity. This wasn't merely about professional disagreement or family dynamics. It was about public safety. He faced an impossible choice: remain silent and potentially allow a dangerous design to proceed, or speak out against his brother's project, confirming his family's perception that he was jealous of Daichi's success. Either way, the foundations of his carefully constructed life were showing dangerous fault lines. Chapter 4. Collapse. Scene 1. Structural failure. Rio arrived at the regulatory review meeting with a mixture of professional duty and personal dread. As an independent consultant requested by the Tokyo Building Commission, his role was clear: assess the structural integrity of the Asahi Towers design. What remained unclear was how he would handle the inevitable confrontation with Hana, and by extension, his brother. The conference room was clinically bright, with architectural plans spread across a long table. 4 other engineers were already reviewing different aspects of the design. Nakamura-san, thank you for joining us, said Yamamoto, the chief building inspector. We understand this may present a conflict of interest given your family connection, but your expertise in seismic reinforcement is unparalleled. Rio nodded. I'll provide an objective assessment, For 2 hours, the team methodically examined the structural specifications. Each passing minute deepened Ryo's professional concern. The cantilever extensions exceed safe parameters by nearly 40%, noted Kimura, the foundation specialist, even with the proposed composite materials. Ryo traced his finger along the load-bearing calculations. These numbers are fundamentally flawed. They've used best-case scenarios for material stress tolerance instead of established safety standards. The core support structure is dangerously minimized, added another engineer. In a Category 7 seismic event, the transfer of lateral forces would overwhelm these junction points. Yamamoto's expression grew increasingly grave. In your professional opinion, Nakamura-san, what is the risk assessment? Before Ryo could answer, the door opened and Hana entered, her composure barely masking her irritation. This review was scheduled for next week, she said tersely. We're still finalizing the engineering specifications. The preliminary construction permits were submitted yesterday, Yamamoto countered. Standard procedure requires immediate review. Hana's eyes narrowed when she saw Ryo. I wasn't aware family members would be conducting the assessment. Nakamura-san was selected for his expertise, Yamamoto replied. Now, regarding the cantilever specifications, those are revolutionary design elements, Hana interrupted. The building codes you're applying were written before these materials were even developed. The physics hasn't changed, Ryo said quietly. In a significant seismic event, this design would experience catastrophic progressive collapse. The clinical terms seemed to hang in the air, a sterile description for what would be a horrific reality. That's your opinion, Hana retorted. It's mathematical certainty, Ryo corrected, sliding the calculations toward her. The design, as currently specified, is fundamentally unsafe. As Hana stalked out to consult with her team, Ryo realized that the stakes had risen far beyond family dynamics. This wasn't merely about professional disagreement, it was about preventing potential tragedy. Scene 2. Family Investment. That evening, Ryo parked outside his parents' home, rehearsing what he would say. He needed to warn them about the project's problems without revealing his official role in the regulatory review. His mother greeted him with surprise. "Ryo, we weren't expecting you. Come in. Your father's just reviewing some investment documents." The casual mention of investments accelerated Ryo's heartbeat as he followed her into the living room. His father looked up from a stack of papers, reading glasses perched on his nose. "Ryo, good timing. You can be the first to hear our news." "What news?" Ryo asked, although he already suspected the answer. "We've invested in Daiichi's Asahi Towers project," his father announced proudly. "Premium units, 2 of them, one as our retirement property and one as an investment." Ryo felt the floor tilt beneath him. "How much?" "Nearly all of our retirement savings," his mother said cheerfully. "But Daiichi assures us the return will be substantial. The units are already valued at 30% above our purchase price." "That's because they haven't been built yet," Ryo said carefully. "I've heard there might be some design concerns." His father waved dismissively. "Daiichi explained that. Just competitors trying to slow down innovation." "The designs I've seen have serious structural issues," Ryo persisted, "especially regarding earthquake safety." "So now you're an expert on luxury condominiums?" His father's tone sharpened. "Daiichi warned us you might try to undermine the project." Ryo blinked. "He what?" "He said you've been acting strangely since he and Hana got together," his mother explained. "That you might try to sabotage their success out of, well, jealousy." The preemptive accusation left Ryo momentarily speechless. "I'm not jealous," he finally managed. I'm concerned about safety. The cantilever designs exceed— Here he is, Daichi interrupted, entering from the kitchen. I thought I heard your voice. Come to congratulate Mom and Dad on their investment? Daichi, the regulatory review revealed serious problems with— Wait! Daichi cut in, his expression darkening. You're part of the review team, after I specifically requested you be excluded due to conflict of interest. I was asked to consult because of my expertise in seismic reinforcement, Ryo explained. You see, Daichi turned to their parents. He's using his position to interfere with my project. This is exactly what I warned you about. Ryo, his father said sternly, I never thought you would stoop to professional sabotage because of personal feelings. The accusation struck like a physical blow. This isn't about personal feelings. It's about public safety. People will live in these buildings. People who aren't you, Daichi countered. People who trust Hana's vision and my management. Ryo looked from his brother to his parents, seeing only closed expressions of disapproval. Whatever he said now would only be interpreted through the lens of their predetermined narrative. I hope I'm wrong, he said quietly, rising to leave. For everyone's sake. Scene 3. Company Crisis. The emergency meeting at Asahi Holdings the next morning vibrated with tension. Ryo sat at the far end of the conference table, present as a regulatory liaison, a role that now felt like a trap. Kobayashi, CEO of Asahi Holdings, addressed the room with barely controlled fury. The Building Commission has issued a preliminary rejection of our permits based on critical safety concerns. Construction is halted indefinitely, and our pre-sale clients are threatening lawsuits. Hana sat rigid beside Daichi, her composure brittle. The review was conducted improperly. One of the consultants has a personal vendetta against the project. All eyes turned to Ryo. Is this true, Nakamura-san? Kobayashi demanded. Do you have a personal conflict with Ms. Yoshida or Mr. Nakamura? Mr. Nakamura is my brother, Ryo acknowledged, but my assessment was based solely on engineering principles. The structural design fails to meet basic safety standards. Yet you didn't recuse yourself, Kobayashi noted coldly. I was asked to participate because of my expertise, Ryo explained. The commission needed someone who specializes in seismic reinforcement. Director Takahashi, head of the legal department, cleared his throat. We face significant liability exposure. 62% of units are pre-sold with non-refundable deposits. If we can't deliver, or if we substantially alter the design features that were marketed, the company could face bankruptcy, Kobayashi finished grimly. There's more, Takahashi continued. If it's determined we knowingly proceeded with unsafe designs, criminal negligence charges could be filed against key personnel. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. We need solutions, not accusations, Kobayashi finally said. Can the design be modified to meet safety standards while maintaining its signature elements? Not without fundamental restructuring, Ryo replied honestly. The cantilevers would need to be reduced by at least 60%, and the core support structure significantly reinforced. That would destroy the entire concept, Hana objected. Better than destroying lives, Ryo countered quietly. As the meeting dissolved into heated arguments between the design team and company executives, Tanaka leaned toward Ryo. Your brother looks like he wants to murder you, he whispered. But you did the right thing. That design was a disaster waiting to happen. Ryo watched as Daichi conferred urgently with Hana, both casting venomous glances his way. Beyond the professional crisis unfolding before him, a more personal realization settled like a weight. His family would never forgive what they would perceive as betrayal, regardless of his motives. In the midst of the chaos, Rio slipped out his phone and sent a brief message to Emmy. "Everything's falling apart. Need your perspective. Can you talk tonight?" As he set the phone down, Kobayashi's voice cut through the din. "I want alternative solutions on my desk by tomorrow morning, or heads will roll." Starting with the project management team. Daichi's face drained of color, and for the first time, Rio saw genuine fear in his brother's eyes. Chapter 5. Reconstruction. Scene 1. Midnight Confession. At 2:37 a.m., Rio paced his darkened apartment, sleep a distant impossibility. When his laptop chimed with Emmy's incoming call, he lunged for it like a drowning man reaching for a lifeline. Her face appeared on screen, concern etched in her features. "Rio? What's happening?" The careful composure he'd maintained throughout the day crumbled at the sound of her voice. "Everything's collapsing. The Asahi project, my family relationships, all of it." He detailed the regulatory review findings, his family's financial investment, and the company crisis meeting, the words tumbling out in an uncharacteristic rush. "They think I'm sabotaging Daichi out of jealousy," he concluded, voice hollow. "But those designs would fail catastrophically in an earthquake." "People could die, Emmy. And your parents have invested their retirement savings," she added quietly. "Everything. If the project fails, they lose everything." He raked fingers through his disheveled hair. "If I say nothing, I'm complicit in potential tragedy. If I speak up, I'm destroying my family's financial security and confirming their worst suspicions about me." "What does your professional judgment tell you is the right thing to do?" Emmy asked. "To prevent an unsafe design from being built, regardless of personal cost." "Then you already know your path," she said gently. "The question isn't what to do, but how to bear the weight of doing it." The simple truth of her words broke something open inside him. "I don't know if I can lose them completely, Emmy. As dysfunctional as our relationship is, they're still my family." "What if there was a third option?" she suggested. "Not silence, not destruction, but reconstruction." Rio stilled. "What do you mean? What if we redesign the project, maintain the aesthetic vision while correcting the structural flaws?" "We? I have experience with innovative cantilever designs from the Lyon project. You have unparalleled structural expertise." Her eyes sparked with determination. "Together, we could create something both beautiful and safe. Hana would never accept my involvement. She might, if the alternative is project failure and potential litigation." Emmy's voice softened. "This isn't about winning or losing, Rio. It's about building something better than destruction." As dawn's first light filtered through his blinds, Rio felt something he hadn't expected in the midst of crisis. A flicker of hope, fragile but genuine. "Where would we even begin?" he asked. Emmy smiled. "We start where engineers always do, with the problem in front of us." Scene 2. Creative Synergy. For the next 3 days, Rio's apartment transformed into a virtual design studio. His dining table disappeared beneath stacks of printouts, his walls became covered with sketches, and his computer screen was permanently split between calculation software and Emmy's video feed. "If we reinforce these junction points," Rio suggested, highlighting areas on the 3D model they'd constructed, "we could maintain 60% of the cantilever extension while meeting safety requirements." Emmy studied the model from her Paris studio. "What about incorporating tensile support cables here and here?" She sketched directly onto her tablet, the lines appearing instantly on Rio's screen. "We could disguise them as design elements, They'd actually enhance the visual flow while providing critical structural support. Their working rhythm evolved with surprising speed. Ryo's precise structural calculations complemented by Emi's innovative aesthetic solutions. Hours dissolved into focused collaboration, their conversation shifting seamlessly between Japanese and French technical terminology. The core support structure is still inadequate, Ryo noted during their second day. Even with the reinforced junctions, the lateral stress during seismic activity would— "What about a dynamic core?" Emi interrupted, excitement in her voice. "Like the Taipei 101 design, but with modifications for residential scale. A tuned mass damper?" Ryo considered the suggestion, calculations already forming in his mind. It could work, but how would we integrate it without compromising the open concept interior Hana emphasized? What if we make it visible? A feature rather than something to hide? Emi's fingers flew across her tablet. Here, a central atrium with the damper as a sculptural element. It becomes part of the building's identity rather than a hidden necessity. Ryo stared at her sketch, a solution emerging that was neither his nor hers, but something new, born from their combined perspectives. "That's," he started. "Brilliant," she suggested with a smile. "Better than brilliant. It's viable." By the third day, their initial concept had evolved into comprehensive plans, structural calculations, material specifications, 3D renderings, and cost analyses. What had begun as a desperate attempt to prevent disaster had transformed into something genuinely innovative. "This design actually improves on Hana's original concept," Ryo observed, reviewing their final renderings. "The aesthetic impact is stronger because the form now honestly expresses its function." "Truth in design," Emi agreed. "Beauty that emerges from integrity rather than illusion." The parallel to his own emerging transformation wasn't lost on Ryo. Something had shifted within him during their collaboration, a confidence born not from external validation, but from the alignment of action with values. Scene 3. Blueprint for Change. On the evening before his presentation to Asahi Holdings, Ryo stood before the wall where they had pinned their final designs. The comprehensive solution represented more than just an engineering fix. It was a complete reimagining that preserved the project's bold vision while ensuring its safety and viability. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Emi asked from the laptop screen positioned nearby. "Technically, yes," Ryo replied. "The solution is sound. Whether they'll listen to me is another matter." "They'd be fools not to," Emi said firmly. "This design isn't just safe, it's revolutionary. The visible damper concept alone could become a signature element for the entire Asahi brand." Ryo turned toward her. "How do I handle the personal dynamics?" "Daichi will see this as another attempt to overshadow him. Hana will view it as a critique of her original vision. Present it as what it is, a solution, not a criticism. You're offering a path forward, not pointing fingers backward." Emi paused. "And remember that their reactions reflect their insecurities, not your worth." He nodded, absorbing the wisdom in her words. "What if they reject it outright? Then you'll have done everything possible to prevent harm while offering a constructive alternative. The rest is their choice." Her expression softened. "But I don't think they'll reject it. This design speaks for itself." Ryo studied the renderings once more, seeing them with fresh eyes. The redesigned Asahi Towers maintain the dramatic silhouette and luxury amenities of Hana's original concept, but with an honest structural integrity that actually enhanced its aesthetic impact. The visible damper created a stunning central atrium that would become the building's signature feature, while the reinforced cantilevers, now supported by elegant tensile elements, preserved the floating sensation Hana had prioritized. "This is better than anything I could have created alone," he acknowledged. "Better than either of us could have created alone," Emmy corrected. "That's the power of true collaboration." As he organized the presentation materials, Rio realized that regardless of tomorrow's outcome, something fundamental had shifted within him. For the first time, his actions were guided not by the need for approval or the fear of rejection, but by the clarity of his own values and the confidence in his expertise. "There's something else we should discuss," Emmy said, her tone shifting slightly. "I've been offered a position in Tokyo with the International Design Consortium. I was going to turn it down, but now—" Rio looked up, hope rising unexpectedly. "When would you start?" "Next month, if I accept." Her smile held both question and promise. "It seems the universe might be offering us a more permanent collaboration opportunity." The possibility of Emmy's presence in Tokyo, of transforming their digital connection into physical reality, added a personal dimension to tomorrow's professional challenge. This wasn't just about solving a design problem. It was about building a future where truth and integrity formed the foundation. "I'm ready," Rio said, and for the first time in his life, he truly was. Chapter 6. Resistant Forces. Scene 1. Proposal Presentation. The Asahi Holdings boardroom carried the sterile gravity of a courtroom. Executives in dark suits lined both sides of a polished table, expressions carefully neutral as Rio arranged his presentation materials. At the head sat CEO Kobayashi, his penetrating gaze fixed on Rio with measured skepticism. Director Takahashi, who had arranged this opportunity, gave Rio a slight nod. "Nakamura-san has prepared an alternative structural approach that may resolve our regulatory concerns while preserving the project's aesthetic vision." Rio felt a flutter of nervousness that he hadn't experienced in years of technical presentations. The stakes here transcended professional reputation. They encompassed his family's financial security and his own personal integrity. "Thank you for this opportunity," he began, voice steady despite his racing heart. "The Asahi Towers concept represents a bold architectural vision. The regulatory concerns aren't a rejection of that vision, but rather an opportunity to evolve it into something both innovative and structurally sound." He activated the digital display, showing side-by-side renderings of Hana's original concept and his redesign. Several executives leaned forward, noting the striking similarities in overall appearance. "The original design encountered 3 critical structural challenges," Rio continued, advancing to detailed cross-sections. "First, the cantilever extensions exceeded safe parameters by 40%. Second, the core support structure was insufficient for seismic stability. And third, the glass-bottomed pool created unresolvable stress points during simulated earthquake conditions." Kobayashi's expression remained unchanged. "We're familiar with the problems. What we need are solutions, not restatements of regulatory objections." "Of course," Rio replied, advancing to his solution slides. "This redesign maintains the dramatic silhouette while implementing 3 key innovations." With methodical precision, he explained the reinforced junction points, the tensile support system disguised as design elements, and finally, the centerpiece of the solution, the visible mass damper integrated as an architectural feature. "The damper becomes a sculptural element in a central atrium," he explained, rotating the 3D model to show the interior space. "It transforms a necessary structural component into a signature design element that enhances the building's identity." As he continued through the technical specifications, Rio noticed a subtle shift in the room. The initial skepticism gave way to focused attention, with several executives making notes and exchanging glances. The revised design exceeds safety requirements by 28%, Rio concluded, while actually enhancing the aesthetic impact through honest expression of structural elements. Kobayashi studied the rendering silently before asking, "Construction costs?" Initial estimates show a 12% increase in materials, offset by a 20% reduction in specialized labor costs. Overall budget impact of approximately 4% increase. Rio had anticipated this question, having worked through detailed cost projections with ME. Time frame for implementation? With expedited approvals, construction could begin within 6 weeks. Kobayashi tapped his pen thoughtfully. Interesting approach. I'd like a direct comparison with Mrs. Yoshida's latest revision before making any decisions. Of course, Rio agreed, though he wasn't aware Hana had submitted revisions. That won't be necessary, came a sharp voice from the doorway. I'd prefer to present my own work myself. Scene 2. Defensive Resistance. Hana entered the boardroom with Daichi following closely behind, both carrying portfolios. The sudden tension in the room was palpable. "Miss Yoshida," Kobayashi acknowledged. "Mr. Nakamura has just presented an alternative design approach that appears to address the regulatory concerns." "With all due respect," Hana replied, her polished professionalism barely masking her irritation. "This is highly irregular. Mr. Nakamura has no official role in this project, and his involvement represents a clear conflict of interest given his family connection." "My involvement is as a regulatory consultant," Rio clarified calmly. "The building commission requested my expertise in seismic reinforcement. After which you took it upon yourself to completely redesign my concept," Hana countered. "I've submitted my own revisions that address the regulatory concerns while maintaining the original vision." She quickly set up her own presentation, displaying modified versions of her original designs. "We've reduced the cantilever extensions by 20% and reinforced the core support structure. These adjustments satisfy the minimum safety requirements." Rio noticed immediately that her revisions were superficial, addressing symptoms rather than fundamental flaws. "The modifications still show critical failure points under maximum stress scenarios," he noted, keeping his tone professional despite Daichi's glare. "Maximum stress scenarios represent statistical outliers," Hana dismissed. "We can't design exclusively for worst-case events." "In seismic zones, we must," Rio insisted. "Tokyo's earthquake risk isn't theoretical." Daichi stepped forward. "What my brother fails to mention is that his alternative completely compromises the aesthetic integrity of the original concept. The visible support elements and central atrium fundamentally alter Hana's artistic vision." "That's not accurate," Rio countered, returning to his renderings. "The redesign enhances the visual impact by creating honest structural expression. The visible damper becomes a signature feature rather than a compromise." "This is absurd," Hana interjected. "You're suggesting we turn a luxury residential tower into an engineering showcase. Our clients aren't paying premium prices for exposed structural elements." "On the contrary," said Takahashi, speaking up for the first time since the confrontation began. "The central atrium concept is quite striking. It creates a unique selling point that differentiates the project from other luxury developments." The executive committee began examining both presentations side by side, their technical discussions creating a momentary buffer between the personal tension. "You had no right," Daichi muttered to Rio during this interlude. This project was my chance to establish myself independently. This isn't about you or me, Rio replied quietly. It's about creating a safe building where people will live. It's always been about proving you're better, Daichi shot back. Just like always. Rio met his brother's gaze steadily. No, it's about doing what's right, regardless of who gets the credit. Scene 3. Merit Recognition. As the afternoon stretched on, the evaluation process shifted from the boardroom to the technical department, where engineering specialists conducted thorough assessments of both designs. Models were constructed, simulations run, and stress tests analyzed with meticulous attention to detail. Chief Engineer Matsuda supervised the process, his weathered face revealing nothing as he reviewed the results. "Let's run the seismic simulation again," he instructed. "Maximum predicted intensity for the Tokyo region." The digital models on the large monitor demonstrated dramatically different outcomes. Hana's revised design showed multiple failure points during the simulated earthquake, while Rio's redesign maintained structural integrity. "The visible damper concept is particularly effective," noted one of the engineers. "It reduces lateral force by nearly 60% compared to conventional methods." Hana stood with arms crossed, her expression hardening as each test further validated Rio's approach. "The simulations are based on theoretical events that exceed historical precedent," she argued. "We're designing a residential building, not a nuclear facility. People's lives will depend on these structures," Matsuda replied evenly. "We design for what could happen, not just what has happened." The technical team moved on to cost analysis and construction feasibility. Rio remained quiet, allowing his work to speak for itself, while Hana continued to defend her revisions with increasingly emotional arguments. "The tensile support system is elegant," observed another engineer, examining Rio's detailed specifications. "It actually enhances the floating effect of the cantilevers while providing crucial structural support. And the central atrium creates a dramatic communal space," added the interior design consultant. "It transforms a structural necessity into a luxury amenity." As the evaluation proceeded, the technical merit of Rio's solution became increasingly difficult to deny. Even Daichi had fallen silent, his earlier defensiveness giving way to reluctant recognition of the superior design. "We'll need to run additional material stress tests," Matsuda concluded, "but preliminary assessment strongly favors the alternative design for both safety compliance and construction feasibility." Kobayashi, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. "Ms. Yoshida, your original concept was visually striking. Mr. Nakamura, your structural solution is undeniably superior. The question remains whether we can effectively integrate these approaches." "I won't compromise my vision," Hana insisted, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Sometimes the greatest design achievements come from embracing necessary constraints," Rio suggested quietly. "True innovation often emerges from solving real problems, not ignoring them." Kobayashi nodded thoughtfully. "The board will need time to consider all aspects: technical merit, marketing implications, budget impacts, and timeline feasibility." He glanced at his watch. "It's nearly 7. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning for a final decision." As the meeting adjourned, Rio gathered his materials, aware of Daichi watching him from across the room. The technical validation had confirmed what Rio had always known, that excellence spoke for itself when given the opportunity to be heard. Whether that would be enough to save the project, and by extension, his family's investment, remained to be seen. Tomorrow's decision would determine not only the fate of Asahi Towers, but also the future of Ryo's relationship with his family. For now, he had done everything possible to offer a path forward that sacrificed neither safety nor vision. The rest was no longer in his hands. Chapter 7. Natural Justice. Scene 1. Pyrrhic Victory. Ryo arrived at Asahi Holdings headquarters the next morning with cautious optimism. The technical evaluation had clearly favored his design, but corporate decisions rarely hinged on merit alone. CEO Kobayashi stood at the head of the conference table, his expression unreadable as executives and project team members filed in. Hana and Daichi entered last, both looking tense. After thorough consideration of both technical and commercial factors, Kobayashi began once everyone was seated. The board has reached a unanimous decision regarding the Asahi Towers project. He gestured toward the digital display, where Ryo's redesigned concept appeared in striking detail. We will proceed with Mr. Nakamura's alternative design. The visible damper concept, in particular, provides both the structural integrity required for regulatory approval and a distinctive architectural feature that differentiates our development in the luxury market. A murmur of approval rippled through the technical team. Ryo maintained a composed expression despite the surge of validation he felt. Across the table, Hana's face had gone rigid, while Daichi stared at his hands. However, Kobayashi continued, his tone shifting, I must address the broader financial implications of this situation. He distributed a document to each person present. This report details the current financial position of Asahi Holdings. Ryo scanned the document, his satisfaction quickly giving way to concern. The figures revealed a company in serious financial distress. Due to the regulatory delays and our commitment of non-refundable deposits to premium materials, Kobayashi explained, Asahi Holdings faces a severe liquidity crisis. Construction loans have been suspended pending resolution of the design issues, and early investors are threatening legal action over the delays. Director Takahashi added, even with the redesign approved, we project a 90-day minimum delay for the required permit process. Our financial models indicate the company cannot sustain operations beyond 60 days without significant capital infusion. Are you saying that even with an approved design, the company might not survive to build it? Ryo asked. Kobayashi nodded grimly. That is the unfortunate reality we face. The premature marketing campaign and material commitments made before final regulatory approval have placed Asahi Holdings in an untenable position. The irony wasn't lost on Ryo. His design had been chosen, but the victory might be meaningless if the company collapsed before construction could begin. What options are being considered? He asked. We're exploring several emergency measures, Kobayashi replied. Capital investment partners, restructuring of existing debt, and potential merger opportunities. The board will meet with financial advisors this afternoon to evaluate these alternatives. As the meeting concluded, Tanaka approached Ryo. Congratulations on the design approval, he said quietly, though it seems a hollow victory given the circumstances. Yes, Ryo agreed, watching Daichi exit the room with slumped shoulders. Hollow indeed. Scene 2. Natural Consequences. A week later, Ryo sat across from Tanaka in a quiet coffee shop several blocks from their office. And the newspaper headline on the table between them told the story. Asahi Holdings files for bankruptcy protection amid design controversy. It's official, Tanaka said, sliding a company memo across the table. Asahi Holdings is entering structured liquidation. The Towers project is indefinitely suspended, and all pre-sale contracts are being unwound. Ryo read the document carefully. What about the investors? The deposit holders. They'll recover approximately 60 cents on the yen, Tanaka replied. The bankruptcy court will oversee the distribution of remaining assets. The implications for his parents settled heavily on Ryo's shoulders. 60% return meant a 40% loss of their retirement savings. And Daichi? He asked, though he already suspected the answer. Demoted and reassigned to the regional office in Osaka, Tanaka confirmed. The board determined that as project manager, he failed to ensure proper regulatory compliance before committing company resources. And Hana? Her contract was terminated. Word is, she's struggling to find new opportunities. The industry has taken note of her role in the Asahi debacle. Ryo absorbed this information with mixed emotions. There was no satisfaction in watching the consequences unfold, only a somber recognition of cause and effect. I received a call from your father yesterday, Tanaka added carefully. He was seeking information about the bankruptcy proceedings. Ryo looked up sharply. My father called you? Tanaka nodded. He mentioned their investment in the project. He seemed different, less confident than when I met him at your company event last year. Did he mention me? Ryo asked before he could stop himself. No, Tanaka admitted, but he did ask detailed questions about the structural issues that led to the regulatory rejection. He was trying to understand what happened, not just assign blame. Later that afternoon, Ryo's phone rang with a number he hadn't seen in weeks. His mother's. Ryo, she said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. Your father and we need to discuss our financial situation. The Asahi investment. It's been a significant setback for our retirement plans. The humility in her tone was unprecedented. Would you be willing to offer some advice? She continued. Your father is meeting with financial advisors next week, but we thought, given your expertise. The request represented a shift that Ryo had never anticipated, his parents acknowledging his judgment and seeking his input. Not because he was their son, but because he had been right. Of course, he replied simply. I'll help however I can. As he ended the call, Ryo felt no triumph in the circumstances that had brought his family to this point. Only a quiet recognition that sometimes the most profound changes come not through confrontation, but through the natural unfolding of truth. Scene 3. Future Pathways. Ryo stood at his apartment window watching evening settle over Tokyo. The city lights blinked on, one by one, each representing countless lives interconnected in ways both visible and invisible, like the structural elements of a well-designed building. On his laptop, Emi waited patiently as he considered the email that had arrived that morning. The International Design Consortium is offering me a senior position in their Paris office, he said finally, leading their seismic innovation team. That's extraordinary, Emi replied. And convenient, since I've accepted the Tokyo position. We'd both be relocating. Like structural elements passing each other mid-air, Ryo observed with a smile. Or we could both choose the same city, Emi suggested. My offer included flexibility about location. I could request Paris instead of Tokyo. Ryo considered this possibility. Paris would mean a complete fresh start, away from family complications, professional history, everything familiar. Is that what you want? Emi asked, her expression thoughtful. To leave everything behind? The question resonated more deeply than she might have realized. It wasn't just about geographical location, but about how he would position himself in relation to his past. I spoke with my parents yesterday, he said. They've lost 40% of their retirement savings in the Asahi bankruptcy. That's significant, Emi acknowledged. How are they handling it? With surprising humility. My father actually acknowledged that he should have listened to my concerns. Rio shook his head slightly, still adjusting to this unexpected shift. They've asked for my help in restructuring their finances. And will you help them? Yes, Rio said without hesitation. I've already arranged meetings with financial advisors who specialize in retirement recovery strategies. And Daichi? Reassigned to Osaka, he sent a text message, first communication in weeks, saying he's found an apartment there. Reading between the lines, I think he's relieved to have some distance from the situation. Emmy studied him through the screen. So Paris or Tokyo? Rio turned from the window, his decision crystallizing. Tokyo. I'd like to help my parents navigate this transition, and perhaps there's an opportunity to rebuild our relationship on more honest terms. Not because you feel obligated, Emmy clarified, but because you want to. Exactly. It's my choice, not their expectation. He felt the rightness of the decision settling into place. And professionally, I've received inquiries from 3 firms interested in my structural innovations. There's meaningful work to be done here. Tokyo it is then, Emmy said with a warm smile. I'll notify the consortium tomorrow. When do you arrive? He asked. 3 weeks. Just enough time to pack up my Paris apartment and say my goodbyes. As they discussed logistics and plans, Rio realized how profoundly his perspective had changed. The validation he had once craved from his family no longer seemed essential. He had found his worth in his integrity, his expertise, and his capacity to build rather than destroy, even when it would have been easier to walk away. The path forward wasn't about escaping his past, but about constructing a future that integrated the lessons it had taught him. Like a well-designed structure, the strength would come not from rigidity, but from the honest expression of supporting elements working in harmony. 3 weeks, he repeated, already imagining the moment when their collaboration would no longer require digital mediation. I'll be waiting. Reflective ending. In his studio the evening before Emmy's arrival, Rio stood among architectural models that charted his journey like a physical timeline. The flawed Asahi Tower's design sat beside his collaborative reimagining, 2 structures representing not just buildings, but ways of being. He lifted the redesigned model, studying how the visible support elements enhanced rather than compromised its beauty. Like truth itself, structural integrity didn't diminish the aesthetic, it elevated it. The building was stronger for its honesty. Life, Rio realized, followed similar principles. His family's relationship had been built on fragile illusions, appearances maintained at the expense of reality. When tested by genuine pressure, those illusions had collapsed, just as Hana's design would have during an earthquake. Yet from that collapse came opportunity for reconstruction. His parents, humbled by financial loss, had begun to see him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not with sudden adoration, but with something more valuable, respect. Their weekly financial planning meetings had evolved into conversations where his voice was actually heard. Even Daichi had written from Osaka, his message lacking the usual competitive edge. Starting fresh here, he'd said, learning from what happened. The justice that had emerged wasn't vengeful or orchestrated. It was simply the natural consequence of actions meeting reality. Excellence had indeed spoken for itself. Integrity had proven more valuable than popularity. And true family, he now understood, wasn't about blind loyalty, but about connections that encouraged authentic growth. Rio placed the model back beside a sketch of his and Emmy's first joint project, a symbol of possibility yet to be built. The foundations he'd established through difficult seasons would support structures more beautiful than he could have imagined when standing alone in his family's shadow.